raise your hand if you've ever seen anything like this. Kids totally zombied out in front of their screens. Or this, oblivious to the world going on around them. Or worse, letting a perfectly beautiful sunny day pass them by. Oops. Let's face it, it's a pretty familiar sight. I saw most hands were up out there. The sad thing is, we're beginning to look a lot like this, which is what the movie WALL-E predicted we would all look like 100 years from now. But sadly, I'm sorry to say, I think that future has already arrived. And it's available on Amazon. It's scary how much time kids spend in front of their screens. And it's something everyone seems to agree is a problem. But that it's something we can't do anything about, as if it were as certain as death or taxes. Well, I don't agree. I think it is something we can do something about. And I think we have to at least give it a try for the sake of our kids and for the sake of the future. Now, 20 years ago, as the mother of 3 young kids, I started noticing how much time kids were spending watching television, and I was horrified. I wanted to save the world from this evil force. But like with many other crusaders, I failed pretty miserably. It's not enough just to raise awareness. And in the end, most people tuned me out, and the rest of them, I think, thought maybe I was a little psycho, which maybe I was. So I gave up, at least outwardly. But I continued the battle in my own home. And you can imagine what that must have been like for my poor, sorry children. As my youngest daughter said at one point, with a big roll of the eyes and a heavy sigh, "Great, why are we stuck with the crazy mother who hates TV?" Well, despite the occasional grumbling, I did decide to limit screen time in our household pretty significantly. And my kids began to fill those freed up hours with doing things, with play. They would play on the playground in the snow. They did silly face painting. We cooked together. They read a lot of books. Maybe more than anything, they spent a lot of time just laying on the floor, playing with a favorite toy that sparked hours of imaginative play. Now, I realized that this actually may sound a little terrifying to parents in the room, but it didn't turn out to be as hard as I thought it was going to be. Once I made that decision to limit screen time and set some rules around it, play and fun began to just naturally take over. Play became the babysitter in our household that TV was serving as in so many other households. And my kids figured out how to entertain themselves, and I think honestly that they were happier because their days were more fun and more stimulating than if they had just been zoned out in front of a screen. Now, I'm not saying that we were perfect, but I am saying that I ended up with 3 adult kids whose company I absolutely adore. 2 of them are here today, and 1 is actually my business partner. Now, even throughout all those years of just focusing on my own household, I've never stopped worrying about the impact of all that screen time on society as a whole. And the stats are pretty startling. 20 years ago, when I was worrying about it, kids were spending about 4 hours a day in front of screens. It is now closer to 7.5 hours a day, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. Think of that number. I mean, that's more time than most adults spend at their jobs every day. And kids do it 7 days a week, not just 5. That adds up to 50 hours a week, which is more time than they spend doing anything else other than sleep. And when I was on my crusade, I was worrying about those TV sets in the home. Now it's a handheld device that's the most unbelievably entertaining device that you can ever imagine, and they're with kids everywhere they go, even in their beds at night when they're supposed to be sleeping. We're all addicted, and the impacts have been huge. We know this. It's on health and fitness, nutrition, mental health. But the one problem I'm going to focus on right now is the impact of all that screen time on kids' ability to be creative. Now, when I talk about creativity, I'm not talking about finger painting. I'm talking about the kind of creative thinking that leads to innovation, like what drove Einstein in his breakthrough discoveries. It's also what 1,500 CEOs, when polled recently by IBM, cited as the single most crucial factor for future success. It's also what is measured on the Torrance test of creative thinking. This test has been given to millions of kids, and tons of research has been done on the data. And it turns out that the Torrance test is shockingly accurate at predicting future creative accomplishment. Kids who do well on it are far more likely to be entrepreneurs, inventors, innovators. And it's for that reason that a lot of people are very concerned about a recent discovery. Torrance test scores have been declining, and they have been for a while. And that's a problem for us. Our future depends on today's kids becoming tomorrow's Steve Jobs or Thomas Edison. Now, there are a lot of reasons that those scores are declining. But part of it is the reduced amount of time that kids spend in that simple, unstructured play. Because the one thing that researchers agree on is that play is essential to sparking the creative development in children. And it's really just that simple. All that silliness you might see on a playground, that's not just child's play. Jean Piaget, the famous developmental psychologist, put it very simply. Play is the work of childhood. But we don't really let kids play all that much anymore in our culture. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But think of those 7.5 hours a day they're spending on a screen. Think of what else they could be doing with at least a part of that time. Things that would be good for their minds and their bodies. So I have kind of a radical solution. I think that America could use to go on a screen time diet. I mean, we wouldn't let kids lay around and consume endless amounts of junk food, would we? So why do we let them do it with junk media? Now, my Crusader approach 20 years ago didn't work. It's not enough just to raise awareness. You have to offer concrete solutions. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about what could those concrete solutions be for this problem, and what role could I play? And I took inspiration from the words of, well, I decided to become an entrepreneur to fight the problem as opposed to an activist. And I took inspiration from the words of Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator, the premier startup incubator. He encourages entrepreneurs to make something people love. Well, I took that idea, and my spin on it was to make something children love to play with that will be an appealing alternative to get them off the couch and away from the screen. And what do kids love more than a teddy bear? And so I created Zylie and Friends. And I'll show you. And our mission with Zylie is to unplug to play, to inspire kids to get off the couch and get into the world of adventure. Now, Zylie, she travels the world herself and goes on adventures, but more importantly, she inspires kids, the kids who play with her, to go on adventures of their own with her as their inspiration. Because if you combine great stories, great characters in a toy, you have a far greater chance of inspiring a child to step away from the screen, getting outside, and playing a little bit. And so, as I said, our mission is to unplug to play. And when my son Matt and I launched Zylie, everyone told us that we were crazy, that we just didn't get it, that kids don't play with real toys anymore, that we had to do something based on a screen. And like all good, reckless entrepreneurs, we completely ignored all that advice, and we decided to give Zylie a try. And as you can see, she inspires kids to go on adventures like in their backyard or in the local playground, or even under their own kitchen table. Now, so we gave Zylie a try, and we'd like to also suggest that America give the screen time diet a try. And I'm going to offer a few very simple baby steps because I think that's the best way to get started on a diet. So our baby steps are, 1, ignore this bullet, please, because it's got a typo in it. So just listen to me for a second. Pick one day that you delay the time at which the screens can be turned on, because it's easier to do that than to turn the screens off once they're already on. And delay that by 30 minutes and do something fun instead with your child. 2, like with a diet, consider what it is they're consuming and substitute some of the junk media for good media, because there is some out there if you look for it. And 3, I would suggest adding 30 minutes a week of reading a book with your child. These are insanely simple, easy baby steps, but it's a start. And Zylie is only one solution to helping get kids off the couch. But again, it's a start. And I believe we have to give it a try for the sake of our kids and for the sake of our future. We have to try unplugging and letting kids just be kids. Thank you.